Good afternoon, members. Welcome back. We've got an echo from somewhere. So if you've got your laptops on, turn it off. So this is a continuation of the meeting held on Thursday, the 19th of September. And let's hope that in future this doesn't happen again. I think members should be able to get through a meeting in one day. The standard rules apply, and you heard them the first time round. So I'll ask now straight to Stuart, who will call the roll.
Well, thank you, Convener, and good afternoon, members. So starting, as always, with those members in the chamber, could I ask you to confirm your attendance by pressing the green button when the lights in front of you start to flash? Thank you. Apologies, members, we seem to have an issue with the voting machine at the moment, so we'll close that vote down. And we will try again electronically. So again, if you press the green button when the lights start to flash, and we'll see how we go this time. Thank you. Thank you, members. We'll close the vote down now. Thank you. And then I have quite a number of members participating on Teams, and I'll come round you individually to confirm your attendance. And I'll start with Councillor Baldry.
Present.
Councillor Ballance. Councillor Bruce.
Present.
Councillor Cameron.
Present.
Councillor Collier.
Present.
Councillor Green.
Present.
Councillor Hutchison.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Jarvie.
Afternoon, present.
Councillor Knox.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Mackay. Councillor McIntosh, that's Ryan McIntosh.
Present.
Councillor Angela McLean.
Present.
Councillor McEwen.
Present, thank you.
Councillor McGilvray.
Here, Stuart.
Councillor Miller.
Present.
Councillor Morrison.
Present, Stuart, thank you.
Councillor Monroe.
Present.
Councillor Niven.
Present, Stuart, thanks.
Councillor Oldham.
Present.
Councillor Robertson.
Present.
Councillor Rosie.
Afternoon, everyone. Present.
And Councillor Willis.
Present.
Convener, we also had a number of apologies for this afternoon's meeting. So I've got apologies from Councillor Atkin, Councillor Gregson, Councillor Gunn, Councillor Logue, Councillor Mackey and Councillor McLennan.
Members, the declarations of interest you made at the original council meeting still apply. Are there any further declarations?
Yeah, so thank you, Convener. So in addition to the transparency statement that was offered by Councillors Brown and Gowans, respective item 22.4, Councillor Coggle has advised that he's a member of the Prospect Trades Union, but he's not an active member, so he will, having applied the objective test, reviewed his position in relation to that item, and any personal connection he does not consider he has an interest to declare. Thank you.
Councillor Gray.
I'd like to make a similar transparency statement. I'm a member of the British Medical Association trade union, but I don't think it should prevent me taking part in the item.
Members, it's my pleasure to welcome 3 new members to the Chamber, one of whom is on holiday. But we now have Councillors Coghill, Councillors Edmondson and Councillor Gregson. Councillor Coghill and Councillor Edmondson are in the Chamber today, so welcome. At the next meeting of the full Council, I may ask you to say a few words of introduction, but you've escaped from that for today. So, members, we now move to item 22 on your agenda, which is notices of motion. And the first notice of motion is motion number 3, and I go to Councillor Crawford.
I move this motion on behalf of now 62 community councils across the Highlands who have publicly asked that this motion be granted as worded. This motion is about enhancing public knowledge and improving democratic input from the people.
I'm sorry, but there's music going on in the background.
Yeah, okay.
To silent. It's not acceptable if a member is speaking on an important issue and there's music playing in the background. So Helen, would you start again, please?
Can you hear me okay now? Is that okay? No echo. Okay, thank you. I move this motion on behalf of now 62 councils, community councils across the Highlands that have publicly asked that it be granted as worded. It's about enhancing public knowledge. It is fully compliant with the Aarhus Convention, a UK treaty which is binding on all decision makers. As decision makers, we need to step up and comply with that convention. This motion has 4 actions. Action 1, give people access to an interactive map showing all major electricity generation, transmission and storage developments set in their context. Developers could easily provide that information electronically in a prescribed format, just as they currently provide photomontages at varying focal lengths. Proprietary mapping systems are mainstream, and a lot of this work could be automated. Publish that map on the Highland Council website so that everyone, our communities, public bodies, developers can envisage what is happening across the whole of the Highlands. Why is this mapping needed? We are receiving an unprecedented increase in the number of major applications, and a generational change is in the making. And people are asking very legitimate questions. How do they relate to each other? How will it impact our way of life? A holistic map will help answer some of those questions. A picture is worth 1,000 words. We know the council can do this because it already has an online wind turbine map. Inexplicably, that map is only updated twice a year and it only relates to wind turbines. It is not adequate and we need to do better. Action 2. The EIA regulations and related case law require that the full cumulative impact of these major applications are properly considered as they progress through planning. Known impacts should include at least basic information about the wind farm itself and the potential grid connections for any project, including battery storage. But that does not happen in practice. In practice, it is rare to see pylon lines and wind farms considered together. In the trade, it's called salami slicing, where wind generation and transmission are considered separate, standalone applications. There needs to be a shift away from that, because each of these is related to its neighbour in some way, be that visually, be that physically, or by way of land ownership. We should be demanding clear answers from the Energy Consents Unit and from Scottish ministers about this, so we can help the wider public. The law requires it. Action 3, to better support our community councils with the offer of specific expert major infrastructure training. Clearly, the generic planning training currently on offer is inadequate. 62 community councils have told us it is inadequate. We need to step up and better support them. Action 4, the last action, to undertake a full review of what else we can do to better support those whom we serve. I'll give you some examples where we could step up. When a major infrastructure application is lodged, we could publish it on our social media. We could do it without expressing an opinion, but simply to bring it to the attention of members of the public. We could also address the obvious searing inequality that community councils simply do not have the money to pay for the expert advice they need to respond to the deluge of complex applications that they're trying to deal with. This motion is needed. It is a step into the daylight. Please let us be the first in Scotland to take the lead on this. Plenty other councils across Scotland are watching to see what Highland does today. I understand from Councillor Gowans on the 19th of September, you said to me that you have an amendment that you would like to lay. And I very much hope sincerely, Councillor Gowans, that is to the betterment of the motion. For example, by giving very clear timelines as to when the actions that I'm seeking will be implemented. 62 community councils across the Highlands deserve that. Thank you.
Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Helen Crawford. I think it's really important to acknowledge the strength of feeling in our communities. People choose to stay, relocate or visit the island because of its natural beauty. Anything that threatens that understandably elicits profound emotional responses. Nobody wants to see our beautiful Highland countryside marred by unnecessary industrialisation. I'm humbled and heartened by the community activism this emotive issue has prompted. I was a union rep for 20 years. I know the power of collective bargaining and the impact that can be made when people unite behind a common cause. I admire the way our communities have come together to advocate and campaign to protect our beautiful Highlands. They've come together regardless of their political leaning, and they expect us councillors to do the same. I want to say to my communities, I hear you loud and clear. I understand the pressure community councils are under when faced by these expansive and contentious planning applications. I was a community councillor for years, as was my ward colleague, Councillor Fraser. Our community councillors are unpaid volunteers. There's an enormous power and knowledge imbalance between developers and community representatives who are expected to contribute to the planning process with limited time, expertise and resource. I want to make it clear I'm happy to support Councillor Crawford's motion today. I think it's fair to say that pretty much everyone here has been supportive of what's set out in the motion from the start. And we on the administration have been working away in the background to introduce the measures that our communities have been asking for. Our communities have told us that although some of what is proposed is underway, it's not nearly enough. Therefore, I'm proposing some additions to Councillor Crawford's motion to build on what's already been delivered. We've been advised that the narrative preamble might prejudice future planning applications, so we've been asked to remove it. As a fellow lawyer, I'm sure Councillor Crawford will understand that. But that only applies to the introduction that appears before the words, "this council agrees," so it isn't part of the actual motion. As Councillor Crawford touched on, cumulative impact is already a material consideration. Indeed, several planning applications in the Highlands have been refused on the basis of cumulative impact. Councillor Crawford mentioned the interactive map of wind energy development, which is already on the council website. Following feedback from communities, we are exploring ways to expand the existing map to include things like transmission lines, substations, battery storage facilities, along with the relevant associated infrastructure, so the communities can visualise what is planned across the Highlands in context. We are introducing planning training for community councils and exploring ways they can be better supported to deal with major planning applications. I'm moving an amendment which is basically additions. My additions include specific commitment to seek to introduce a planning fee that community councils can use to support their community engagement. The substance of the motion is not and has never been controversial. Important? Yes, undoubtedly that, but it was never contentious or controversial. I want to say enormous thanks to Councillor Crawford for redrafting our motion in line with previous advice as to competency, so that we have a proper chance to fully explore and implement the measures that the communities have asked for. I'm moving the amendment, which I'll put in the chat now, which retains everything in Councillor Crawford's motion and proposes additional measures that the community councils have told me that they want. My amendment doesn't just retain the substance of the original, it retains the actual wording of Councillor Crawford's motion, because I'm sure that also came from the communities affected, and I don't want to see any but diluted. I'm going to include the full wording of the motion as amended when I put it in the chat, so that you can all see that the original wording is still there with the additions that I'm proposing. In the spirit of collaboration, which is genuinely offered, Councillor Crawford, I'm sure you will accept my additions so that your motion will pass without the need for a vote, and we can get on with implementing the measures for the benefit of our communities.
Councillor Rees.
Thank you very much. Members, there are some very, very good and healthy things about this motion that has received a lot of professional advice before it's made it to the Chamber today. It will be very popular indeed with the public. Think of those 62 community councils, and that number is increasing. It is democracy in action because it is giving the public and community councils vital knowledge about an important matter. The cost, frankly, when you compare it to the billions in the industry, is absolutely minuscule, and compare it to the huge benefits. It will be good for Highland Council's reputation. Our current map only shows wind farms, and I understand it's only upgraded twice a year. We need to think about the literally vast battery energy storage sites that are proposed, the pylons, the tracks, the substations, and the work camps, such as has been mentioned for Skye. We need to think about the pump storage schemes, particularly on Loch Ness. And Inverness members, please note the support for this motion from the Ness District Salmon Fishery Board. Here's two figures to ponder, one taken from the excellent council training that we received on Friday. Roughly speaking, by 2050, Scotland will be producing perhaps 8 times as much energy as the country consumes at peak times. And in order to get that energy south, it appears that a number of new pylons or underground cables will be required in excess of what we already have. I also learnt from that training myself that SSEN only plan about 10 or 15 years ahead, even though we basically have a target for 2050. I think we need to ask to get the plans for further afield. That would be really helpful, because we need to seriously consider the overall cumulative effects of all the new developments, both the good ones and the not so good. And this motion's intention primarily is to help our public, who elect us, to understand this better, because it's big and it's very complicated. This is an opportunity, I would suggest, for Highland Council to be an absolute pioneer across Scotland, because we can be leading the way if we pass this motion. It gives us, other councils are watching right across the land. And basically, it's not complicated. I hope it's not political. I don't see that the motion can be, I hope it wouldn't be watered down or diluted, and I don't think that was the intention, that I couldn't quite get it all over the PA system. It's received professional advice, and the subject matter literally It's just, even when we're not around in 20 years' time, the subject matter is going to get bigger and bigger. This is the largest thing, probably bigger even than the hydroelectric locks being put in the 1950s and 60s. And whether we like it or not, it falls upon us to try and lead the way with this. And the substance of Councillor Crawford's motion will go a long way. It is pioneering, and I really hope we can all support it. Thank you.
Councillor Fraser.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Our communities are facing an unprecedented number of closely linked, interrelated renewable energy applications. With the number of applications, the multiple stages of consultation, together with the different roles of the Energy Consent Unit and Highland Council, it is no wonder that many people feel confused by the system and struggling to engage effectively. This motion and the subsequent amendment seek to address some of these issues. The motion from Councillor Crawford had action points covering mapping, cumulative impact, updating planning guidance, additional planning training for community councils and improved community engagement. The amendment from Councillor Knox takes all that on board and then goes further with in a number of important areas. The mapping section requests the inclusion of associated infrastructure such as permanent access tracks, which can be more intrusive and visible than the local grid connections. In section 2, the additional paragraph will cover a much broader range of changes than the one highlighted in the second paragraph of the original motion. The section on planning training reflects the engagement that is taking place to deliver that outcome. And very importantly, when it comes to community engagement, the amendment seeks to establish an additional funding stream for community councils to help them carry out their important role and with all its challenges. It's for all these reasons that I believe the amendment delivers more than the original motion, and on that basis, I'm happy to second the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Andrew Jarvie.
Thank you, Convener. In my time as council, I've seen so many times that a large part of the angst that comes from communities around large-scale applications is very often largely down to the fact that people don't know simple details that they want to know to actually reach the right conclusion. And too often I've seen, even to the very end of planning applications, developers just not being forthcoming with quite basic information. And if you don't have all the facts, can anyone reasonably be expected to fully endorse a major development or plans in their communities? No. And very often I have seen people, maintaining objections to the end of applications simply because they don't have the information. And the bigger an application, the bigger a risk there is of a major change to your community. So in putting the information simply out there, actually this is in applicants and developers' interests. This is no bad thing on them. I can think of many applications in the past I've seen come to planning where if the applicant had just been more upfront with the community, that actually there was nothing fundamentally to worry about in it. But when you don't know, you don't know. And too often in big applications, I feel this council's been treated as just a formality, because in large-scale applications for energy, we're only a consultee. We don't get a say. The government make the decision in the end. And so the fact that we're just a formality, I think to me that comes across very clearly sometimes. So this motion is in this council's own interest too. In terms of some of the responses from the Section 95 officer in the motion here, where it states that there'll be a cost to implement the map. How? When actually we already have a map. You can go onto the Highland Council website and you can see there is a map using the ArcGIS software that the council already has paid for that maps out the history of all energy developments in the Highlands to date. That already exists. All this is calling for is use that same map, and update it as things are coming along, not things that have happened. It already exists. 85% of the work has already been done. So, does this council really know, to what extent that things are already settled? So this is just eminently sensible. For the reasons I said, that this can only help this council. It can only help applicants further by giving a clearer framework for what it is they're actually saying, and let people come to their own decisions once they have all the information. I can only wholly endorse this and look forward to seeing it rolled out.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, convener. Thank you to fellow councillor Helen Crawford for bringing this motion, this important topic, to our attention. As an Inverness City Area member, I am aware that the local Crown and City Centre Community Council have also given their support to stand with their fellow community councils across the region, to stand together, be heard in the public domain. The Highland area is being swamped by energy developments. We are gradually losing our scenery and seeing property values fall, but get very little by way of jobs and other benefits. Our hospitality sector are saying visitors will stop coming if the views are lost. Our residents want the peace of nature, not industrialisation. We cannot stop all developments, but there must be limits, and there must be control of what goes where. We must be able to see the full picture. We must have better visibility of information of other developments. We cannot allow development to pile on development, creating a ring of steel in many of our most iconic spaces. Looking at the list of community councils that back the motion, community councils from urban Inverness to most rural areas are united in seeing the need to have proper oversight and control of developments. It is past time information to be properly available to allow full consideration of what is being proposed. This is happening across the UK. We must listen to our communities. So thank you, and I support this motion.
Councillor Barbara Jarvie.
Afternoon all. Very good words all round from everyone who's spoken so far, which I agree with. That this is an outstanding motion, and really Highland Council has an opportunity to set a standard. When policies came forward for planning, I don't think there was the vision that there was going to be such a snowball of applicants from not just this country, but other countries wanting to invest in us and take things forward. And I think it's gone at such a fast pace that we've been caught unawares at every level. And I commend our officers for being open and admitting that they don't know because they don't have an answer, because they haven't had guidance. Our community councils are a voice for our community, in touch at the heart of our communities, trying to do our best. Unfortunately, some of our community councils have folded, and community councillors especially, because they find this such a burdenous task. They don't know what to ask, how to ask, where's the information. It's no secret Highland Council website isn't the easiest to navigate. The support of training is absolutely key. It's a fair playing field. We've all had events in our local areas with various projects of that are all coming forth. But when I attended an event recently that was meant to be a presentation, and there was no presentation, there was no handouts, and we have a brave community council that I admired for standing up and asking questions. But what was really sad, and I felt we as a chamber and as a council let these people down. She started every question with, "Forgive me for feeling stupid. Forgive me for asking a stupid question. These people are not stupid. We haven't supported them, and we seriously need to correct that." The questions were really good. Other people in the room commended these questions because they wanted to ask them. So this motion delivers a simple, not complicated tool to enhance a system that is currently designed for the few and not overly accessible by the layperson, the lay people that make up our community councils. Regarding the cost, it may well be cost neutral because this helps developers, our lay people, our officers and our councillors. When you think to have everything all in one place, this must be saving a massive amount of officer time when it can be discussed, and it would save things coming back. Please. Okay,
you have to wind up, please.
I really support it. So thank you, especially with these surgeon applications. We need armed with fair information.
That means wind up, please.
Done.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to start by thanking my colleague, Councillor Crawford, for bringing this motion forward today. It's a very important motion, and it marks a first step in a long journey to making sure that our communities and the wishes of those who live in our communities are respected. I think the motion we've got here is the first step on a very long journey, because our communities aren't anti-development, they're not anti-wind farm, they're not anti-pylon, but they want to be informed, they want to know what is happening in their communities. They want to be able to communicate with us effectively and make representations so that their views are counted. Now, the motion that Councillor Crawford has is very good in a number of ways because it outlines these factors, it outlines what needs to be done. It's a route map to instruct this council on how to help our community councils, help us with good decision making. Now, I'm disappointed with Councillor Knox's contribution and indeed her amendment. She says she's not changed the wording, but it's a matter of fact that's not true. There is changes from Councillor Crawford's motion, and I'd expect better than this level of political posturing for something that's so important to us all. Now, the real-time mapping, as Councillor Jarvie said, it's 99% of the way there. It just needs that extra little bit to get it over the line. It just needs that bit to allow our communities a holistic view of what is going to be happening to them. As other members have said, when it comes to making decisions regarding our communities, we're often just a consultee. And as someone that sits on the North Planning Committee, I can say that we're treated often with complete disregard from the Energy Consent Unit. They run roughshod over this council. They run roughshod over our communities. So this motion is the first step in sending a strong message, not just to the Scottish Government, not just to the power companies, that we are listening to our communities. We want our communities to be empowered to help us make good decisions. So that's why I'm supporting this. Not because I'm anti-development, not because this motion is anti-development. But sometimes we need to accept we're not doing enough and we can do more. Thank you.
Councillor Willis.
Thank you, Convener, and good afternoon. I congratulate Councillor Crawford for all the work she has done to bring this important motion to Council. I certainly support it, and I note that some of the 62 community councils supporting it are in Loch Harbour. To be honest, I wonder why Councillor Crawford has had to bring this motion to Council, as to me it seems logical that all the actions in the motion should already be in place. Call me naive, but I do not understand why there is not a coherent plan of the energy infrastructure requirements for Scotland, and why there is not a comprehensive map of existing and planned renewable developments, including pump storage schemes across the Highlands. I do not understand why planning applications for major energy developments are presented in a piecemeal fashion and do not include all the cumulative aspects from the beginning. And I do not understand why CCs do not receive the support they need to be able to prepare and present their cases for major energy developments in their areas. As others have said, this motion is good for the Highlands, it's good for communities in the Highlands, and it's good for the council. So I certainly support it, and I hope everyone else will. Thank you.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Convener. I'll start by saying that I fully support the motion by Councillor Crawford. We need to be fully open with the people of the Highlands, and what are we afraid of? We don't have a deciding vote on what happens in the Highlands, so why are we afraid of representing the view of so many of the concerned voices? I've said it before, we must take the people with us. If we have trouble identifying where all these turbines and hydro schemes are being proposed, built and in production, what hope have ordinary folk? Uncertainty leads to speculation and conjecture, and therefore discontent. I don't think there's an absolute hatred towards wind turbines, but not knowing the full picture is causing resentment. Show people that we are fully transparent and that we listen to them. Support them and make their views heard, and we will be thanked. We have nothing to lose by being frank. We're told there's already a map in place showing where all the wind turbines are planned or in place. So why should Councillor Crawford's request likely lead to financial implications? Is it because the map does not do what Councillor Crawford is asking? It's not colour-coded, it's difficult to explore and understand, and does not include hydro schemes. It does not give us an easy-to-understand picture. I'm astounded to read that dialogue with Scottish Government ensuring full cumulative aspects of development are considered would result in an impact on member and officer time. Do we not already do this? With regard to community engagement, I can't understand why this even needs to be requested. We should expect that the community councils are supported and engaged by those representing them and given full support. We're not alone in this. Today's papers are reporting councils in England looking to take legal action for the rape of their landscape in pursuit of profit from companies taking the route of least resistance. At least they're making a stand and supporting the views of their communities. We have a duty to protect the Highlands, and this is not just about the rape of our countryside. It's about fairness. Why do Highlanders pay more for their electricity than the southwest of England when what they are consuming is produced on our doorstep? Figures show that we can produce more than we could ever use, and that figure is going to rise substantially. Yet we are told that increasing voluntary contributions to local affected areas would make all these wind and hydro schemes untenable. The last time I looked, none of us have heather growing out of our ears. Councillors and officers, we need to do all that we can so that the people are able to make their voices heard, and I implore everyone to vote for Councillor Crawford's motion. At least we'd be demonstrating that we will do everything possible to represent and protect them. But that said, I'd like to acknowledge all the work that goes on. Okay, I'd just like to acknowledge all the work that goes on with Malcolm MacLeod and his team, and David Moody and his team, all the trawling they have to do through to get the reports in support or otherwise. Thank you.
Members, that reaches the end of the 30-minute period for debate. Councillor Knox, you're entitled to wind up if you so wish.
Yeah, very quickly. Thank you, Convener. I'm not able to see Councillor Crawford, so I don't know whether she's prepared to accept. Yeah, carry on.
Hold on, Councillor Knox.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to make it clear, a point of order. I'm not sure if it is or not a valid one.
What is your point of order?
It is that I would like an adjournment in order to consider the wording of the amendment,
sorry, there
because
is no
the amendment
process for
is
us to have.
extensive.
That is not a point of order. Councillor Knox has proposed an amendment. You have proposed a motion. And that's the end of the matter. Councillor Knox, you may start from the beginning. Sorry.
Thank you, Convener. I'm really sorry, Councillor Crawford.
Councillor Stewart. Councillor Knox.
That's
the end of it, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Knox, just start again, please.
Okay. Just so you know, Councillor Crawford, I sent you the full text of the amendment with the full motion as amended by email, in case you wanted to read it there. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the community councillors who've contacted me about this. and the campaigners for all of the hard work to get us to this position. I'm genuinely happy for Councillor Crawford's motion to pass as originally drafted, if that's what happens today. But of course, I'll be really disappointed if we don't use this opportunity to add the further measures in my amendment that the communities have asked for. Our communities expect us to put our political differences aside on this one. I think we're all agreed on that. I've tried to do that today, and I hope that Councillor Crawford can as well by accepting my amendment, so we don't need to vote. Thank you, Convener.
Councillor Crawford, you have 5 minutes.
I would like an adjournment, please, so that I can consider the very extensive...
I have already ruled on this, Councillor Crawford. You have 5 minutes.
What I can say to
you have 5 minutes, Councillor Crawford, to wind up.
Oh, okay, so what I want to say in summary is that I've not had an opportunity to consider the amendment. The amendment...
Crawford, your group leader has already said he rejects the amendment, so he must have had time to look at it. So please start again. I'll give you your full 5 minutes.
Well, unfortunately, as I say, I've not had an opportunity to consider the amendment. I've taken some time to look at an email which I have received from Councillor Emma Knox, which purports to put in the wording of the amendment in red ink on top of my original motion. I have read that and it does not make literal sense. So that overlay of the red wording of the amendment itself is not grammatically correct and actually doesn't make sense. I've then separately tried to compare online the amendment wording with my original motion, and I have not been given an opportunity to do that within a reasonable time frame, and I absolutely object to that. I think that's wrong, and I think that that shows that the functioning of this council, seriously, there are problems. I cannot tell you how upsetting I find that on something that's so important to 62 community councils across the Highlands. I'm not in a position to accept the amendment because I haven't had an opportunity to consider it within the context of what is a fairly complex motion. So I'm not going to be able to accept the amendment. I'm going to have to put it to a vote. I feel that's a terrible shame, considering the amendment has existed presumably for a couple of weeks. And I'm really sorry to say that, because I would very much have liked to have accepted an amendment to the betterment of this motion. So I feel that's a shame, Convener. I think you should reconsider. I seriously think you should reconsider. But that's the situation that I'm in after, frankly, 5 months of work on this motion, which means an awful lot to communities across the Highlands.
The amendment. Members of the public, I'm sorry, but if you continue to do that, I'm sorry, we will have to make things silent.
Amendment to the motion.
Members, you have a motion from Councillor Crawford. You have an amendment which is in the chat. Yes, Councillor Christie.
Two councillors who don't have access to the chat. There's a serious IT failure today that I can't access the chat on my own device. But there are two councillors here that have not seen it because they don't have access to the chat because they've not been issued with IT equipment. I move to have an adjournment so they can at least have a look at the amendment.
We will then have a 5-minute adjournment to allow a copy to be printed out for both of the new members. members who have their laptops do not need a printed copy. Members, take your seats, please. Members, please take your seats. Can all members please take their seats? Glynis, that means you too.
Start the webcast back. Webcast back on?
Yeah. I'm sorry, there can be no further debate. The debate and the time for debate is finished. It is up to the presenters of the motion and the amendment if they wish to amalgamate or not, or whatever they want to do. But there is no further debate. Councillor Crawford.
Okay, thank you. I'm not in a position, after having received the motion with the amendment written over on top of it, I'm not in a position to accept that amendment, and I can give you some of the reasoning why. As reworded, the real-time mapping would read as follows.
No, Councillor Crawford, now you're re-entering into debate. You know, what you basically said is that you don't accept their amendment, and that's quite...
So I'm not in a position, I'm not allowed to tell you why I don't
No,
accept
but basically what you have said is that you don't accept their amendment. The reason why is the time for debate is over. The time for debate is over, and that's the end of the matter. Councillor Knox, I presume you are still presenting your amendment?
I am, yes, thank you, convener.
Okay. So then, it's out of my hands, Helen. That's the situation. You have a motion and an amendment.
Thank you, convener. So, members, we have a motion from Councillor Crawford, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, and that's in terms of the agenda. We have an amendment from Councillor Knox, seconded by Councillor Fraser, and the wording of the amendments within the chat facility. For members in the chamber, if we come to the vote, if you wish to vote for the motion from Councillor Crawford, I ask you to press the green button. If you wish to vote for the amendment from Councillor Knox, I'd ask you to press the red button and to press the white button if you wish to abstain. And we'll start the voting in the chamber now. Thank you. Apologies, members and convener. I think we seem to have issues with the voting system again, so we'll stop that vote, close it down, and we'll have another go. Yes. So, members, again, if you wish to vote for the motion from Councillor Crawford, it's the green button. To vote for the amendment from Councillor Knox, it'll be the red button, and it's the white button to abstain for those in the chamber. Thank you. So if everybody's voted, we'll close the vote down. Thank you.
Councillor Bremner, did you say you've pressed the wrong button?
Okay, so apologies, members. What we'll do again is we'll run the vote again. So again, Members in the chamber, if you wish to vote for the motion from Councillor Crawford, it's the green button. If you wish to vote for the amendment from Councillor Knox, it's the red button. If you wish to abstain, it'll be the white button. We'll have the voting now. Thank you. So if everybody in the chamber has voted, we'll close the vote down. Thank you, members. And then going round those members on Teams, if you tell me you wish to vote for the motion from Councillor Crawford, the amendment from Councillor Knox, or to abstain, and I'll start with Councillor Baldry.
Motion.
Councillor Ballins.
Motion.
Councillor Bruce.
Motion, please.
Councillor Cameron.
The amendment, please, Stuart.
Councillor Collier.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Green.
Amendment, please, Stuart.
Councillor Hutchison.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Mrs Jarvie.
Motion, please, for the people.
Councillor Knox.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Mackay. Councillor Ryan McIntosh.
Motion, please.
Councillor McLean.
Motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion, please.
Councillor McGilvray.
Motion.
Councillor Miller.
Amendment.
Councillor Morrison.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Monroe.
Amendment.
Councillor Niven.
Amendment, please, Stuart.
Sorry, Councillor Niven, could you repeat?
Amendment, please.
Yeah, I recorded it as amendment, convener. Councillor Oldham.
Amendment.
Councillor Robertson.
Motion, please.
Councillor Rosie.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Willis.
Motion, please.
Thank you, member. Convener, there were 33 votes for the motion, there were 31 votes for the amendment, and there were no abstentions, so the motion is carried.
Members, we now move to item motion number 4 on your agenda, and that motion is from Councillor Ryan McIntosh.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Convener. The Minimum Service Levels Act, passed in 2023, introduces legislated measures that enable employers, including those in our public sector, to issue work notices to trade unions. These notices name specific workers required to maintain minimum service levels. The implications of this act are profound. Workers who refuse to comply with these notices risk losing their protections against dismissal, and trade unions who representing these workers can face lawsuits for damages incurred by employers due to economic loss. This law threatens the fundamental rights of workers and deliberately undermines the principles of collective bargaining. It is crucial that we stand firm in our belief that all workers have the right to strike, a right enshrined in our democratic values. I believe, and I hope many members agree, that any attempt to coerce workers into performing duties against their will, especially during a legally called strike, is not only an infringement of their rights, but also a violation of fundamental human rights. Therefore, I ask members to consider this motion brought forward that we will not issue work notices to any staff employed by this council, and we will uphold the rights of our workers and stand in solidarity with them. Thank you.
Councillor Fraser.
Thank you very much. We value and respect the rights of our trade union colleagues and the partnership relationship we have with our unions. The Council has a responsibility for protection and safe service provision for high-risk areas in our communities. These include adult and children protection services, justice, MHO, homelessness, welfare, emergencies such as flooding and snow gritting at times, out of hours work. It is the stated intent of the UK Government to repeal the Act as part of the Employment Rights Bill due to come before Parliament. They have also said employers should seek alternative mechanisms for dispute resolution, including voluntary agreements, rather than imposing minimum service levels. I therefore propose an amendment to the motion, which will be seconded by Councillor Kate McLean, and that is to delete all words after the first sentence and replace with pending the repeal of the Strikes Minimum Service Level Act 2023, and where strike action has been notified to the Council, we will enter into discussions with our trade union colleagues to reach a voluntary agreement on minimising the risk area of service activity that give rise to concern for the councils. Thank you.
Councillor Christie.
Convener, once again, we have the administration watering things down on another motion. The right to strike is one of the most enshrined rights that any employee can have in order to protect their position, and it's something that we should make sure is protected. Indeed, we should make sure that it's never threatened. And Councillor Fraser's amendment, you know, the Conservatives aren't here, but I would have expected that more to come from the Conservative Party than from the SNP-led administration. It's actually ridiculous that something like that is being brought forward by a radical party in administration. What is wrong with the right to strike? Why shouldn't people have the right to strike if they feel that their conditions, pay, are being eroded or are not fair or not equitable? I would urge everyone to vote against the Conservative amendment from the administration and stick with the motion as laid out by Councillor McIntosh.
Councillor Gregg.
I would like to second everything Councillor Christie has just said. As a member of a trade union who will not be impacted by this particular motion, as I do not work for the council, I would say this approach would upset me greatly. I work in the health service. In fact, tonight I will be going off to night shift at the hospital. I will be the senior doctor looking after the site overnight for all medical patients. I'll be in charge of the high dependency and coronary care units. And the suggestion that as a union member, I would go on strike from that particular critical safety duty, even if we were to go on strike, is insulting. Employees know the parts of their role that is critical to life, limb, and the safety of the public. And it is insulting from this administration to suggest that those workers would go on strike in areas of dispute. Every strike taken by any member of any trade union is done at the last resort. Anyone who works in a safety critical profession like mine only goes on strike at the very last resort. Doctors in this country have never gone on strike because we know that things are unsafe when we do so, and we try and minimize that by not going on strike in super safety critical areas. Any worker who is a member of the trade union takes the same approach. We should not be doing this and we should do what Councillor Christie says and reject this amendment.
Councillor Andrew Mackin.
Thank you, convener. Unlike other councillors, I'm not at all surprised that the SNP is not proving to be as radical as it likes to think it is. You cannot actually take away someone's right to strike. One day they just don't turn up, they're on strike. What this amendment says is that you will have discussions to come to a voluntary decision. Trade unions, whether on strike or not, have a long history of ensuring that safety is maintained during a strike period. Recent nurses' strikes have shown that every single time. Doctors coming off the picket line to go to A&E when required. This is what happens. What happens if you don't get an agreement? Do you then issue these anti-strike notes? This is an anti-strike amendment from, frankly, a right-wing pretending to be radical group, and it should be seen as such, and we should support the motion. A right to strike is a fundamental human right.
Councillor McEwen.
Thank you. And I support the motion as it is. We're living in a democracy, not a dictatorship. And if we take away the right to strike, we're going back to Victorian days where every working man is an underdog and a second-class citizen. No, I support the motion. We're in a democracy, not a dictatorship. And the Highland Council needs to actually wake up and realise that. Thank you.
From my point of view, this motion accepts what is the Labour government's advice going forward until such time as they repeal what is, to be honest, a ridiculous restriction on trade union rights. And that's all it does. So any more of this political posturing is just complete and utter nonsense. The Labour Party have made a genuine decision in Westminster to get rid of this legislation. And they are advising us that the best way forward to make sure that we don't slavishly follow the previous Conservative Party doctrine is to adopt this. So I'll be supporting the amendment. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you. I mean, absolutely. I just echo what Councillor Loban has said. This is not about implementing the anti-strike. This is about following government guidance from the Labour government as to how they want matters dealt with should the situation arise. We have an excellent relationship with our trade unions, fully acknowledge everything that's been said about the fact that emergency services have continued. I'm sure they will continue to do so, and discussion by far seems the best way forward. Thank you.
Ryan, you have 5 minutes to wind up if you wish.
No, I'm good. I'm pretty sure everything that's been said in the chamber has highlighted my motion, so thank you.
Thank you. Stuart.
Thank you, convener. So, members, we have a motion from Councillor Ryan McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Baldry, and that's in terms of your agenda. We have an amendment from Councillor Fraser, David Fraser, seconded by Councillor Kate McLean, and that's within the chat facility. But for those members in the chamber, when it comes to the vote, if you wish to vote for the motion from Councillor McIntosh, I ask you to press the green button. If you wish to vote for the amendment from Councillor Fraser, it will be the red button. If you wish to abstain, it will be the white button. And we'll start the voting shortly. Thank you. If everybody in the chamber has voted, we'll close the vote down. Thank you, members. and then going round those members on Teams. If you tell me you wish to vote for the motion from Councillor McIntosh, the amendment from Councillor Fraser or to abstain, and I'll start with Councillor Baldry.
Motion.
Councillor Balance. Councillor Bruce.
Amendment.
Councillor Cameron.
The amendment, please.
Councillor Collier.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Green.
Amendment, please, Stuart.
Councillor Hutchison.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Mrs Jarvie.
Motion, please.
Councillor Knox.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Ryan McIntosh.
Motion, please.
Councillor Angela McLean.
Motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion, please.
Councillor McGilvray.
Amendment.
Councillor Miller.
Amendment.
Councillor Morrison.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Monroe.
Amendment.
Councillor Niven.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Oldham.
Amendment.
Councillor Robertson.
Motion, please.
Councillor Rosie.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Willis.
Motion, please.
Thank you, members.
Sorry, Councillor Saggers here. I'm doing remotely now.
And how would you wish to vote, Councillor Saggers?
Motion, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Convener, there were 20 votes for the motion, there were 39 votes for the amendment, and there were no abstentions, so the amendment is carried.
Members, we now move to motion number 5. Councillor Willis.
Thank you, Convener. Approximately 300 shared rural network masts are proposed for the Highlands to cover connectivity hotspots in remote wilderness areas where there is no human habitation and no existing access to install and maintain these masts. Many are also located in or close to designated areas. I brought this motion to Council in January, asking the Council to show support for the coalition of concerned partners and to help protect designated areas, precious wildland and nature in the Highlands. The motion received overwhelming support and a letter was sent to the UK Government Minister and the Scottish Government Minister responsible for the UK Government's 4G digital connectivity programme, the Shared Rural Network. Since then, there has been a change in the UK Government. Therefore, this motion is asking that Council resends the letter that was sent previously to the new UK Government ministers, asking that they pause and review the Shared Rural Network programme. Thank you. I think I won't say any more because it was well debated last time. Anyway, I hope that you will support the motion again. Thank you.
Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Convener. Members, the mobile coverage of the Highlands is very limited currently, and there are a number of areas where there is no coverage at all. One of the most important aspects of coverage is the safety of the many people who use the hills for recreation. Emergency services, the police and mountain rescue in particular, use mobile signals to locate lost walkers and climbers in some of the most remote parts of the Highlands. Without that option, searches would be longer and often could result in a tragic outcome. So the suggestion that we should put unreasonable restrictions on the coverage by virtue of limiting the masts is not something I can support. Certainly, I would agree that the mast sharing is the right thing to do to allow for users to have choice of providers, and by that way we can reduce the multiple masts that would be needed to cover any area. But maximising the coverage will enhance the safety of those who enjoy the remote and wildlands across the Highlands. One of the other positive benefits of better communications across the Highlands is that it offers one of the essential means of connectivity that attract businesses and individuals to relocate to the Highlands, and as such it is one of the key drivers to reduce the depopulation that so many of our more rural communities are experiencing. That being the case, I want to propose an amendment to this motion as follows. To amend conditions 1 and 2, where condition 1, consult with rural communities across Highlands to establish appropriate siting of masts to ensure maximum coverage. And for item 2, item 2, ensure the sensitive siting of masts in the Highlands, designated and other environmentally sensitive wild areas. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvie.
Thank you, Convener. I can only wholeheartedly support the amendment there, and if second is needed, I'm more than happy to second that. I can appreciate what's being said here, but I just go back to some of the conversations we had in this chamber only a few years ago, where we were frustrated that the targets for internet rollout were focused on reaching a percentage of the population rather than a percentage of the landmass. Because if there's going to be a 5% of the population by number of people is going to be missed out, it was going to be here, wasn't it? And we talked, there was many discussions that were had about this should be based on landmass, because the previous way of measuring signal rollout was done by population, and that meant there were large chunks of trunk road that had no signal at all, because there was no one living anywhere near it, but it's still an area that's frequently traversed, and there's still many areas of the A9 indeed that don't have that. A large reason why there's been phone mast erection in the middle of moorland is to do with the shift in the emergency service receptions, the basically changing provider onto this new system that needs 4G. So it means likes of mountain rescue teams, when their comms are updated, they will need 4G. So that's why you need masts in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it might only be used a few times a year, but it will save lives. And I can appreciate, the desire to avoid erecting masts in environmentally sensitive areas, but if I'm being honest, if I've had a crash on a road, I couldn't care that's an environmentally sensitive area. I just want to know when I press 999, someone answers. I can appreciate the sentiment, but there are many unintended consequences that would come if this was followed. So I'm more than happy to second and support the amendment.
Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't think many of us or any of us in this chamber would want to see communities not be connected or trunk roads not be connected. But I think quite a few of us don't really want every single bit of wildland in the Highlands to be covered by mobile coverage. So a lot of us quite like to go to places where we can't get a phone signal, and we accept that before we go. And I don't think that everywhere in the Highlands needs to have a phone signal if you're in a remote and rural area. I would like to second Kate Willis's motion. I think we'd actually chatted a bit before. Would you accept a slight change that you would stop your motion at communities, Kate? Would that be acceptable?
Sorry, what do you suggest? Say that again.
So instead of being so prescriptive with your five points you've got at the bottom, would you stop it at communities?
Yes, which is very similar to what I think what Councillor Gale is suggesting. Is that so? Councillor Gale's amendment was to consult with rural communities across Highland to establish appropriate siting of masts to ensure maximum coverage. So that is, that is what we're asking, is that there is consultation with communities. Because at the moment...
We're entering into a debate between members here. So, Russell, if you've got a change to make, you're going to have to stick it in the chat.
I will second. Well,
it's Councillor Balance's second to our motion.
Okay. Well, I will support that then. I don't have any.
He is here.
I'll support that. Thank you.
No one else? Okay. Kate, Richard, do you have the ability to sum up if you so wish?
Thank you, Convener. I think we have to recognise that the footprint of a telecom mast is quite small in general, but the advantages of having mobile coverage across the Highlands is huge. And I think we can safely assume that providers of cell net services will not put masts where there's no money to be made. So I think that we need to consider that as an issue as well. So I think to ensure the safety of people across the Highlands and to encourage people to come and invest and live and work in the Highlands, the maximum coverage is the best way forward. So I stand by my amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Willis, you also have the ability to wind up if you so wish.
Thank you, Convener. Just a couple of points in that these mast locations are total not spots. They are not serving, the objective is 95% geographic coverage, not 95% population coverage. At the moment, the programme is not consulting with rural communities. Emergency services are already operating in mountainous regions. I am a hill walker. I go out and I know that there are areas, along with other hill walkers, we know there are areas there won't be mobile coverage, but there is, the emergency services are still managing to get out and rescue people in these remote areas. In terms of the footprint, the actual footprint of the mast, the site may be small, but many of these masts are located miles from the nearest road and are going to be accessed either by building new tracks into the area, and then in the future they will be serviced with helicopters. So the footprint, there is the potential for a large environmental footprint and a large carbon footprint for many of these masts going forward. The amendment, that Councillor Gale's amendment is, I think I'm happy to accept that. It's basically we're asking UK government ministers to pause and review the Shared Rural Network programme to consult with communities and ensure sensitive siting of masts. So I don't see anything wrong with. I'm happy to accept that amendment. Thank you.
In that case, with the addition of the acceptance of Councillor Gale's amendment, the motion is carried.
Thank you.
Members, we now move to motion number 6. Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Convener. Members, firstly, let me state very clearly that this motion is not suggesting that we shouldn't borrow to carry out capital works. I have never advocated that, and I can't stress that enough. Of course, we have to borrow to finance new schools and other major infrastructure projects. We simply don't have any choice in the matter. If we want to replace our failing and substandard buildings, then borrowing to do that is vital. So now I've clarified that, I want to make very clear what this motion is about, and that is how, when we borrow to finance our capital works, we repay the capital going forward. We have a capital programme that is on a very ambitious Highland investment plan, which I fully support, and under the current process, we finance it through interest-only loans for the period of the loan. Then at the end of the loan period, say for example 25 years, we borrow more money to pay off the original loan, and so it goes on. Currently, we have around £1.14 billion of loans, and we have increased it by 94.6 million over the last year alone. And that is before we start to invest in the very aspirational Highland investment plan. Under this process, our borrowing increases annually, and we never repay the debt. Excuse me a second. As a result, we're paying loan charges of £90.9 million per annum, or to put it another way, £1.74 million per week, and that's steadily increasing year on year. On that basis, if we continue along this road, we'll have debts of at least £3.4 billion in 20 years and be paying £5.2 million per week. With this level of debt, and that is a conservative estimate. Now, you hear that this is the way that it's always been done, and as long as we can afford to pay the loan charges, there's no problem. However, we all know that money is tight. We are struggling to live within our revenue budget at the moment, and we all have to go to community council meetings and tell our constituents that we can't do this or that because money is tight, or we can't have to cut this or that service to make savings. So we obviously can't afford our current debt level. Now, as I said at the start, I recognise that we have to borrow to invest in our capital plans. But we have to do it so over the period of the loan, we have also repaid the capital. So we don't have to re-borrow more to pay off the original loan. By doing this, we will take back control of our finances. At the end of the day, we will not be leaving a financial burden to our children and grandchildren and future generations. Some will say that we do at the moment, it's just like taking an interest-only mortgage on your house, but that's simply not correct. If you borrow £100,000 to buy your house, and at the end of the 25 years you have to pay it off, the value of your property will have increased over the period, and you can sell it and have a nice little bundle of cash left over. With borrowing for a school or a bridge, for example, at the end of the period, we cannot sell the school or the bridge, so it's not an asset but a liability. That will not only need maintaining or replacing in the future, and we'll have to borrow even more cash to finance that, and so it goes on. On the current basis, we are still paying for houses that were built in the 1970s, many of which we don't even own anymore. So we are paying loan charges on something that is no longer in our ownership. Imagine that you bought your house 25 years ago, moved out, but 25 years later you're still paying the mortgage, even though someone else owns it. How can that make any possible sense? So what I'm proposing in this motion is quite simply, I'm proposing that we ask our finance team to look at how we can put in place a means of repaying our borrowing over the period of loans that we take out to finance our capital programme. So if we borrow £50 million over 25 years, at the end of that period we have also repaid the capital. So we don't need to refinance it. For example, if we repay the £50 million loan at £2 million per annum over 25 years, we'll not only end up with no outstanding debt at the end of the period, but we'll also reduce our loan charges year on year as the capital is repaid. So at the end of the year one, we'll pay interest on £2 million less than, and that will continue to the end of the loan. There's nothing new in this. Everyone who's bought their house with a mortgage knows that we have to repay the capital. So it should not come as a surprise or something radical. It's simply common sense. Members, this motion costs the Council nothing, as Mr Porter has confirmed, but has the potential to bring back control of our debt and help us to reduce the burden that we leave for our future generations. Thank you.
Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Councillor Gale, for explaining clearly what you're aiming to do. I have an amendment which will be placed in the chat. This council recognises that the Highland Investment Plan seeks to restore the built environment to provide safe schools for our children to learn in, safe roads for our residents to drive on, and safe buildings for our staff to work in. It was widely supported by members from all parties across this chamber only a few months ago. The Highland Investment Plan was assessed by the Section 95 officer and found to be responsible and affordable and prudent in its present form. Consequently, the Council rejects the motion from Councillors Gale and Christie, which would reduce spend each year, potentially by as much as half, and increase the timeline before schools are improved, roads are repaired, and depots and offices get sorted. I move that rather than do that, that the Council should proceed with the Highland Investment Plan as budgeted and as agreed, and not return to inadequate funding levels, which are what caused these problems to develop in the first place. So I move the amendment and look for a seconder.
Councillor Collier.
Thank you so much, Convener. If there was no one to second the amendment, I'm happy to second the amendment as well. And I'll just start. I rise to oppose this motion which threatens to derail the Highland Investment Plan, a critical initiative designed to the prosperity of our region. While financial responsibility is important, it should not come at the cost of delaying much needed improvement to our infrastructure, schools and roads across the Highlands. We must remember that investment is the cornerstone of growth. The Highland Investment Plan has been carefully crafted to ensure that we can raise funds through the right investments, not reckless borrowing, to deliver real improvement for our communities. The plan presents an opportunity to transform our school estate, upgrade essential infrastructure, and tackle issues that have been neglected for a long time. Yes, the council faces debt liabilities, but abandoning this plan would only delay the inevitable pushing the problems further down the road. The proposed investigation into borrowing options, while well intended, risks sending a message of hesitation when what we need right now is decisive action. We are not here to pass our problems on to future councils and residents. We are here to make responsible choices for long-term solutions. The notion that all borrowings must be repaid within the lifetime of the loan, though admirable, overlooks the reality of public sector financing. Large-scale projects often require longer-term investment horizons. We must take a balanced approach that weighs the immediate needs of our communities against the future burden of debt. This investment plan does just that. By rejecting the motion, we are not avoiding responsibility. We are ensuring that the Highland Council has the tools it needs to grow, adapt, and meet the demands of the future. Let us not sacrifice the well-being of our communities by placing short-term financial optics above the need for essential development. I urge my fellow members to support the amendment so that we can move forward with the improvement our regions desperately need. Thank you.
Councillor Bremner.
Thanks very much. I know that when we did a lot of work on the Highland Investment Programme to make sure that we got ourselves out of the challenge that we had last year when the council reduced its ability to be able to invest in our capital going forward. I remember that very difficult meeting, but we were confident that working through all the options that we had, we would look forward to sorting the problem out ourselves, because we were hearing that UK government was finding it financially challenging. We also found the Scottish Government were also finding it financially challenging. And with that lack of security or uncertainty going forward, how are we going to actually start to recover our roads and our schools, our school estate and our infrastructure on a sustainable basis over many years to come? I understand what this motion is actually saying, and that is that we're looking for a report on options. That in itself, I don't think is much of an issue here, because it doesn't have any immediate or direct impact on the Highland Investment Plan and its capital plans. But, you know, I think when you look at it going forward, there are ways that we could actually look at this, and we've decided to go along with the Highland Investment Plan. You could restrict your borrowing, you could restrict your investment to the grants that we can get. That would be very restrictive indeed. You could also restrict it in terms of the amount of borrowing that you would have going forward, where you wouldn't be able to increase your indebtedness, and that in itself would restrict the Highland Investment Plan going forward as well. we need to have the flexibility to be able to do what we have said in the Highland Investment Plan. And that has, as my colleague Councillor Loudon, that has been said. We've looked at that in detail. The Section 95 officer and his team, very prudent. We've got a costed plan going forward. One, we know how we can pay for that. And without that, we won't have the assurance. That's the thing, the assurance of being able to deliver everything that we have said in the Highland Investment Plan going forward. And I don't want anything to threaten that. The ability to be able to review that was at the time when we gave members the ability to be able to be briefed on the Treasury plans going forward. That was the time to be able to look at that, challenge it. That time has passed. We have adopted the Highland Investment Plan for our roads and schools, and I would suggest that we support the amendment going forward. Thank you very much, Councillor Loudon.
Councillor Finney.
Thank you, Convener. Dear colleagues, I'm surprised that we are still discussing the Highland Investment Plan today, which was approved in this chamber a few months ago. There is an element I welcome in this motion, and it is the sentiment of caution, financial prudence. But what I would like you to consider today is not just what debt will be left in 10 or 20 years, but what cost not investing enough will inflict on future generations or on this council. We have schools in urgent need of repairs. We have a new building that needs to be built. We have roads that will face more challenges as climate change will bring more damage. 2 landslides in Loch Albert last year caused 2 roads to be closed and they had to operate under restrictions for months. If we don't invest now, there will be crises. In my ward, there was a crisis last year. The crisis resulting from the Corran Ferry breakdown inflicted pain and financial loss to communities and businesses, but it also cost the council £3.7 million in just a couple of months. That's the cost of a crisis. If this motion goes through, our ability to invest will be restricted, and our legacy for future councillors will be crises, costing millions of pounds over the next 20 years. Investments will always come with an element of risk. I accept that. But let me tell you, roads in future closing because of floods and deterioration, it's not a risk, it's a certainty. Children in future having to be urgently relocated because of school buildings not fit for purpose, it's not a risk, it's a certainty. It will happen if we don't do anything. Corran ferry vessels aging over the next 20 years is not a risk, it's a reality, it's a certainty. So let's invest now. I cannot support this motion that will restrict our ability to invest to save future councillors from crises such as the one I had to face last year. I stood in this chamber last year crying for help as I could see a crisis coming, and I remember Councillor Rees quite rightly saying to me, sorry, Councillor Fannett, there is no money. I do not want a councillor in the next 20 years to have to face the same situation. The Highland Investment Plan is the transformative answer to ensure that we, as a council, we can move away from firefighting and we start preventing rather than cure. I will support Councillor Loudon's amendment, and I want to build a better future for future generations and future councillors. Thank you very much, Convener.
Councillor Crick.
Yeah, thank you. Richard made it quite clear that he was not trying to stop investment in schools, roads and buildings. Yet several of the speakers are harking back to that. I think it's calling for a report that looks in as to how are we going to repay £3 billion worth of debt, at least £3 billion worth of debt in 20 years' time. It's not saying we're not going to build new schools. It's not saying we're not going to do new roads. It's simply saying, how are we going to actually sort this time bomb of a problem that we've created and that we added to, Councillor Loudon, with the PPP fiscal flexibility we took, which we all agreed, and we knew the repercussions of taking that. But this is about common sense. You know, Councillor Fanny talks about we want to do this, that, and the other. I've got schools in my ward that are demolished, gone, no more. We're still paying the debt on them. We're still paying the debt on them. You know, the fact the schools aren't there, they're being demolished. When Culloden is finally replaced, when Charleston is finally replaced, it'll be the same scenario. So all this motion is saying is, let's have a look. How the hell are we ever going to pay this back? Or, be honest, we're never going to pay it back, in which case, what will happen, Councillor Loudon, if in 20 years' time the interest rates happen to be like they were 40 years ago in terms of refinancing some of the big items of debt? I appreciate it doesn't all come up at the same time as to when some chunks of it come up. So we're not against any of the things you've said. Indeed, we're in favour of them. Highlands will benefit. All we're saying is we do need a plan out of prudence and fiscal responsibility as to how can we, if we can, and it does actually say in the motion, where possible, Councillor Fanny and others, it does actually say where possible. So it's not saying we don't do it at all. So it's quite simple. Either you become the ostriches and stick your head in the sand and don't even look for a way to refinance it, or you start taking a panoramic view and looking around us to think, how can we possibly finance this moving forward? It's a common sense motion. It's not about anything else. It's about common sense. It's what you would do with your own budgets. Pity you don't do it with other people's.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much, Convener. When I first became a councillor, I think the idea of how Treasury finances worked was somewhat over my head. I think, along with many members of the public, I would have made the same analogy as Councillor Gale to personal finances, but that's entirely inaccurate. The finances and the debts and the borrowing of this organisation are nothing like personal finances. And after attending all the member-led sessions, that was the biggest takeaway I had. We are more akin to the borrowing of a nation. Given we're bigger than the country of Wales by geography, I think that's entirely appropriate. And to be honest, I find that I'm completely astounded at Councillor Gale's analogy to making our finances sound like personal finances, because they are not. They are dealt with in an entirely different way. We have to go with the amendment on this one because supporting the Highland Investment Plan is crucial. I don't want any of our children to be taught in a school that's a second-rate building. I don't want any of our roads to be falling apart, and we need the infrastructure. But it's not just about the infrastructure, and those things are not hanging around our necks like albatrosses. What they are is the structures and the facilities that the people of the Highlands need to make sure that they can get about and run their lives as they should be. We absolutely need this investment plan. We absolutely need everything it has to offer. And I would encourage all members, if they are confused about the difference between personal finances and Treasury finances, to take up the member sessions. So thank you very much.
That's a great.
Thank you, Convener. I think I'm slightly confused by quite a lot of what is being said in the chamber, because the entire basis of this amendment is that this motion will get rid of the Highland Investment Plan, right? Your entire motion suggests that if we get rid of this, we will immediately reduce spending by half. We won't. It won't. Councillor Loudon, you're talking to me across the chamber, which is very nice of you, but it won't do that. It will ask for a report that comes to a committee, not even the next committee, which is most of the time what we're trying to ask for. We're asking for a report at some point to look at options. The idea that passing a report that at some point in the future might look at options will contradict a council motion that was agreed in this chamber is ludicrous, and you all know it, because you can all read and you all understand how words work. You know that this motion won't go to the Highland Investment Plan. You are fighting against ghosts. It says in the motion that this will, where possible. It doesn't even limit us from doing the Highland Investment Plan again. You can all read. It doesn't say that
This motion commits us to never borrowing in a way that extends beyond the lifetime of a loan again. It simply doesn't. It says where possible, and you know this. So vote for or against the motion. I didn't contribute to it. I'm not actually as enamoured in the housing analogy as Councillor Johnson referenced. I didn't believe it when the Conservatives said it 10 years ago. I'm not entirely sure it's the best analogy now, but the idea that this motion does what you are arguing against is ludicrous, and you all know it.
Professor Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. I think this is a really important motion. One of the things to highlight here is a word and a phrase that comes up time and again in this debate, and it's common sense. And this is absolutely common sense, but the issue is I look around this chamber, and unfortunately common sense is in short supply, in my opinion. Now, we talk about millions of pounds and investment plans and all this. This is all good and well, and as has been stated, this isn't getting rid of the investment plan. This isn't risking project delivery in any of this. This is making sure that what we're doing is the right thing for now, but also the right thing for the future. Now, someone a lot older and wiser than me, a very well-respected economist said, and I quote, "It's hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong." Now, every time, members, I come into this chamber, I remember that. So what we all have to do is make the right decision, not just for today, not just short term. This step will long outlast this council. It will long outlast this administration, which, given the way that today's meeting's gone, I would be surprised if it lasted to Christmas. But that's a completely different matter. This is common sense. And I think we should all get a wee bit more of it around here and do the right thing for the young people in the Highlands that deserve financial security in the future. They don't deserve to be saddled with a load of debt that's never going to get paid back, that won't undoubtedly bankrupt this council in years to come.
Councillor Gowans.
Thank you, Convener. I feel that the basic problem with this motion is that it's fairly ill thought out. At least I hope it's still ill thought out, because the unintended consequences are quite apparent, or at least they should be apparent. And if they're not, then that's quite deeply worrying about the basic understanding of what this motion could do. Only a few months ago, 9th of May to be precise, councillors in this chamber voted for the Highland Investment Plan. And that was an innovative financial model to provide solutions for our area. It was credible, affordable and sustainable. And the point of that was that we wanted to see, and the public want to see, further investment in our schools, our roads and our communities. However, we all know that our schools are in suboptimal condition, as are our roads. And this motion could well undermine that happening. We recognise that we need to address the ongoing challenge. We maintain 6,700 kilometres of road network that sustain local communities, rural communities, providing safe, reliable connectivity. This motion also appears, or at least it seems to assume, that our professional staff have not fully considered the financial model in detail, when of course they have done so with due diligence and with great rigour, to ensure that they're bringing forward the best solutions for this council so that we can deliver these schools and our roads that are so badly needed. If this motion were to be agreed, this may well and seriously undermine the Highland Investment Plan and the way that it moves forward. And it would do that as from today. So I am asking councillors to think about the consequences of that. It could be we would have Lochaber no more, Sutherland no more, Skye no more, but more importantly, St Clements no more, and many, many other projects. So if you're a councillor who wants to see progress, then you simply cannot support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Loudon.
Well, members, thanks for the quality of this debate. And I've been called upon to have a read of it, and I have. It's quite clear what it says, that the aim is to ensure future borrowing by this council will not result in a debt burden being left for future councils. So that would tend to suggest eradicating the entire debt is the aim of this motion. If that's the case, then clearly spending would have to fall. I've moved the motion. I've moved the amendment. The amendment's been seconded. I don't want to add to what I've already said, and I urge members across the chamber to vote for the amendment.
Councillor Gill.
Thank you, convener. I've been listening to all the words that have been said today, and I have something going on some kind of parallel universe, because this motion has never suggested for 1 second that we stop the Highland investment plan. It's never suggested for 1 second we don't build schools. It's never suggested for 1 second we don't repair our roads. So where this argument has come from is just mind-blowing. I just don't understand it at all. The simple fact of the matter is, if we're a business and we borrowed money, the creditors would expect us to pay that money back. Otherwise, you go bust. If we're, as a council, we've been borrowing for 50 years. We're still paying for that 50-year borrowing. There's no end to it. And if we continue down this route, then it's obviously going to end one way and we'll be in special measures. That's as simple as that. But if we don't, we're talking about investment. This is not investment. This is borrowing. We're not investing. If you invest, you get a return. We get no return, apart from a good schools, which is great, and I don't oppose it for 1 second. But let's recognise it. Let's recognise that this is borrowing, and if we borrow, we have to repay. Mr. Porter has spent a long time to me explaining the whole circumstances, and I have to say, in my first term of council, I did not understand it. And it came as a complete shock to me that we actually were in a situation that we were never going to repay our debt. We borrow £50 million, we pay the loan charge for 25 years, we borrow another £50 million to pay it back again. And so it goes on and goes on and goes on, and there's no end to it. And it has a negative impact on our revenue budget. And the borrowing that we're suggesting at the moment is looking at an assumption that our revenue budget is going to increase incrementally over the next 20 years, so we can keep our borrowing within 10%. Right, that's fine. But imagine what we can do with £3.4 million every year. Sorry, I'm telling a lie here. That's £1.74 million a week that we're spending at the moment. Imagine what we could be doing with that in terms of investment, real investment. So the suggestion that we go away from the Highland investment plan is just absolute nonsense. I've never been suggested. It's how we look at our borrowing going forward and make sure we do it in a responsible manner. And that's all I'm asking people to do, is look at a review and it comes back to us to see what our options are. So I'm quite surprised at how this debate's gone, and I would urge everybody to support the motion. Thank you.
Stuart, I have a motion on the amendment.
Thank you, convener. The members, you have a motion from Councillor Gale, seconded by Councillor Christie, and that's in terms of the council agenda. You have an amendment from Councillor Loudon, seconded by Councillor Ross, and that's within the chat facility. So for those members in the chamber, when we come to the vote, if you wish to vote for the motion from Councillor Gale, it will be the green button. If you wish to vote for the amendment from Councillor Loudon, it will be the red button. If you wish to abstain, it will be the white button. And we'll start the voting in the chamber shortly. Thank you. So if everybody in the chamber has voted that wanted to vote, we'll close the vote down. Thank you, members. And then going around those members on Teams, if you could tell me if you wish to vote for the motion from Councillor Gale, the amendment from Councillor Loudon, or to abstain, and I'll start with Councillor Baldry.
Motion.
Councillor Ballance. Councillor Bruce.
Abstain.
Councillor Cameron.
Derek's amendment, please.
Councillor Collier.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Green.
Amendment.
Councillor Hutchison.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Mrs Jarvie.
Motion, please.
Councillor Knox.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Ryan McIntosh. Councillor Angela McLean.
Motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion, please.
Councillor McGilvray.
Motion.
Councillor Miller.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Morrison.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Monroe.
Amendment.
Councillor Niven.
Derek's amendment, please.
Councillor Oldham.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Robertson.
Motion, please.
Councillor Rosie.
Motion, please.
Councillor Saggers.
Motion, please.
Councillor Willis.
Amendment, please.
Thank you, members. Convener, there were 23 votes for the motion, there were 36 votes for the amendment, and there were 2 abstentions. So the amendment is carried.
Members, there is 1 minute to go to the time limit, so there's insufficient time to deal with motion number 7. So the meeting has ended. Thank you all for your time today.